Thank you. And we record the sessions, of course, in case somebody misses a session, or if you want to go back and rewatch some of it. So it's available in the learning management system. I'll show you that at the end of the session. Now, for those I don't know, my name's Ken Beer. I am the principal engineer at Safe System Solutions and do bits and pieces in the cycling safety space. Actually do quite a bit in the cycling safety space alongside Max. And I'm jumping in here for the on-road cycling facilities module. Max will be back for the next one, though. A couple of things before we do that. Max mentioned how interactive this group was, popping things into the chat and the Q&A, so please continue to do that. The Q&A is a great spot if you had a question you wanted me to talk to, or the chat. We love the chat. It's the way to have your say about things, get a bit of interaction going. I will certainly be asking you questions as we go, and I give out a few prizes, of course, for people who answer my questions quickly or the like. There was an example Max gave me there of a shared path facility. And again, just really things that we see there in shared paths. Imagine if we had a road with that configuration, that we just plonked some sort of pole or sign in the road, and then just narrowed things down to say, well, drivers, you can go onto the other side of the road to try and squeeze your way through that. Just absolutely, completely unacceptable. However, for some reason, some people think it is acceptable to do in these facilities. So not ideal there. And another, I suppose, what you would almost consider comical in a sad way, where, you know, people adding these little winding bits even just to get the symbols in. Anyway, a couple of bits there. One question that came up in the session that Max didn't get to was associated with rumble strips on shared path facilities or cycleways, which certainly can be done. It's often a sort of thick thermoplastic strip which is used, or with thermoplastic with some aggregate in it, something to ensure it continues to have its grip. But those can be used on the approach to crossing, pedestrian crossing points, or other particular specifics. But do make sure when you're doing that riders are able to see it, so it's coming up, but also hitting it at a perpendicular, at a 90-degree angle there. We don't want riders hitting any changes in surface at these odd angles, which could sort of destabilize the rider. One other question that did come up last session, which Max wanted me to just highlight, was around priority, road user priority when a cycleway crosses an area, or where pedestrians are crossing on a cycleway. Well, it's it's bike priority unless it's marked as a pedestrian crossing. That's the answer to that one. Now, you may have used the 360-degree footage. Hopefully you got to see a couple of examples there of crossings, and you saw Max and myself having a chat and riding through. I hope you enjoyed that. We've got a number of different 360-degree footage examples for you. Some of you may have just done it on the screen, scrolling around. Some of you may have been able to actually hold your phone and look around as though you're there. We had the example 1 there, and then the example 2. So slightly different road environments, but crossing a road. Now, I think, Marissa, there's a poll here. I'm not going to give any prizes for this, and hopefully we'll have a fair bit of uniformity, but let's see if the poll pops up. Of those two, example 1 and example 2 that you looked at, which do you think is best practice for shared path crossing a road? And yeah, as I say, no prizes. It's a little easy. I make it a little tougher than that to get a prize. I'll give you another 3 seconds. Don't worry if it didn't pop up on your screen. Again, you're not being marked on any of this stuff during the session. I am going to give you an assignment to do at the end of this session, though, which you will be marked on. So we can't even tell who votes what, so don't worry about that. All right, let's end that poll. Display results. Okay, almost everybody on example. Somebody I need to have a chat with who's gone the example 2. It's okay. Well, example 2 does. They've got a bit of speed calming on the approach, which I like to see, but I think most of us are recognizing the advantages of that priority crossing with the raised area at the crossing point. That one's nicely well lit and got lots of other advantages. You'll get some 360-degree footage of some of the stuff we're going to go through today, which you'll be able to view from the saddle. No Wally's today. I'm a bit disappointed. Wally's a good friend of mine, but no, there won't be any Wally's today. The reason for that is there is a assignment for you to do, I'm going to take you through the details of the assignment. And for today's session, we are going to be talking about cycling facilities on road in different configurations. So we're going to start with protected bike lanes, both one-way and two-way protected bike lanes with separators and the like. Then we're going to go into on-road bike lanes without that physical separation and different ways that plays out. And then we'll have a little bit of a chat about those mixed traffic areas and how they can be managed. First of all, we're going to start with protected bike lanes. And you can see a beautiful photo here of a protected bike lane. You can see actually that's Max. Oh, yeah, I think that's Max in the background there in the high vis. Or it could be me, actually. I can't even remember. No, it is Max back there. But the idea behind these protected bike lanes is that physical separation between vehicles and the riders who are riding curbside, so close to the curb there. And there's lots of different configurations with parking, without, and we'll go through those and advantages and disadvantages. I do want to remind you that in these sessions, due to the fact that we've got lots of different jurisdictions represented, the jurisdictional specifics on some of this may not be covered. We really encourage you to share your jurisdictional specifics in the chat and with others. But we're talking about the generic principles often, and sometimes some Austroads guidance that's out there as well. But I thought this was a really interesting stat, and one that Max put out on social media at one point. It is from the City of Melbourne study in 2017. And that separated protected bike lane facility, those surveyed a variety of riders, 83% were confident to ride in that area, as opposed to a bike lane without that physical separation. You can see there that only 22% said they were confident to ride in that. So there's an immediate indication, isn't it, that that physical separation away from the doors with those separators and the interaction with traffic just provides huge confidence for a huge variety of road users. And if we genuinely want to be getting people out there riding, commuting and the like, these are the kind of facilities we need to be building. And it is great to see across Australia a lot more of this going in. Okay, so let's start to unpack this a little bit and understand what are we going to do with our road reserve or our street reserve, and how can it sort of be broken up? And there's huge varieties of ways you can do this depending on the environment. And I'm going to give you some more detailed measurements that are in Austroads and some later slides of areas of separation and different lane configurations and widths, but at a sort of generic cross-section level here, using that cross-section creator. What is it? Street Mix? Somebody, first one to put the link to Street Mix in the chat wins a prize, which is basically a little free tool that you can just drop the different lane configurations in, and it produces you a nice cross-section like this. So worth using. There you go. I think somebody's maybe got it. I don't know. I think Ed's got. Oh, it's coming in. Give out some prizes there. Marissa, you can work out who. Anyway, so just this one. Yeah, having that one lane, bike lane in each direction there. So in this case, 1.8 wide and vehicles in each. But you'll see that the parking has been pushed out and there is a separator provided there. That separator to, give that space between the rider and the door as it opens. And in this case, 3.5 meter driving lanes, maybe a little more than is required in some situations. But that's the one-way cycling paths. And there you can see one. You've got that physical separator that we talked about there. And yes, potentially parking is available there. The other option you'd have is to put both riding directions on the one side of the road. Now, this comes with advantages and disadvantages. I mean, an advantage is it's actually a narrower cross-section of your road environment. If you pop it into Street Mix there, you'll see that. But the real reason for this is you only have the one dooring separator there, because you've only got one area there. You could also, and there's depending, in some configurations, you can have a bit of a smaller area there because rider versus rider has that extra little buffer. There's not always a rider there, but you do like to provide good space. As I said, I'll give you some specific measurements of these later. So there are two configurations that we're going to work through here. I want to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of the two. Some of them very obvious to you, no doubt, and others maybe you haven't sort of thought through some of the implications of them. Yeah, so here is the one of the an example of a two-way facility on one side of the road. Quick prize, if somebody can tell me why we've got such a small little separator here. We had a bigger separator in that last one. Who wants to pop that in there? Oh, gee. I want to get no parking. Whoever said no parking first. Really, I mean, you can see it's a little yellow line there. There's a little bit of traffic engineering trivia for you. Yellow lines are no parking line in the road rules. But yeah, so there's no parking spaces there. So there's no dooring possibility. Obviously, if a car was broken down or something, there's a possibility there. But in general practice, we're not seeing, or in general operation, we're not seeing that dooring. So it's a smaller facility. Okay, it could be road spaces, could be some of the other reasons as well. I mean, you might like to provide that buffer. And you could even provide physical barriers there, like a back-to-back W-beam system or the like, to physically separate vehicles, depending on the speed of cars as well. But we'll get into a bit of that. This is a little, I suppose, pros and cons list that Max put together, some of the characteristics of the difference between single lane and bidirectional, the two-way bike lane on one side of the road there. So both obviously providing some form of physical separation between traffic and cyclists, which is great. So no separation between cyclists in opposing directions in the bidirectional. There is that possibility of cyclists striking each other. And the dooring risk is as long as you've designed it well, the dooring risk is significantly reduced, if not eliminated, under both scenarios. Maximizing the use of existing carriageways, the tick is there with bidirectional, but you can reconfigure things in different ways. So we do sometimes have challenges associated with, if you put it all on one side of the road, cyclists still need to access things on the other side of the road. So you've got to have a think about that. Exiting driveways and the like. So trying to reduce the number of conflict points associated with that. Again, it'll be very dependent on where you're entering side access points are. And sometimes you can configure it really nicely. So one side of the road is very free of those access points, and that becomes a really attractive bi-directional side to put something. But then it may be, in that scenario, all of the attractors are on the other side of the road. So there's a challenge there. And a few other ones listed there you can read in your own time. Actually, an interesting one is around the phasing of traffic signals and trying to cross signals with bi-directional lanes, and also points where you change from a bi-directional to either bike lanes within the street or the road, or a single lane direction. That becomes a really interesting challenge of how you do that with signals. Max put a nice LinkedIn post of an example in Toronto of a neat little way that was done to take a bi-directional and split it out into both sides. So it's worth following Max or connecting with Max on LinkedIn if you're on that platform. And he does share a good bit of cycling infrastructure stuff. So yeah, look him up, connect with him, and you can dig back and find this one if you want. A bit of video footage, a bit of other stuff in there. Do keep popping your questions in the Q&A, and Catherine will jump on and either answer them or feed them through to me. But I want to have a bit of a chat about some of the challenges we face with these bi-directional lanes. We know that from a safety perspective, they don't tend to perform as well as the single direction one for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons is associated with vehicles entering and exiting the roadway from these access points, side roads or driveways, commercial areas or the like. And the challenge is really associated with the fact that they subconsciously or consciously looking in one direction for vehicles and potentially cyclists as well. So they have to make that really active decision or be really alert to the fact that cyclists could be coming from the other direction. And if we factor into that as well, the addition of possible sightline impediments, it creates a bit of a challenging scenario. Here's our Transport for London, London Cycling Design Standard diagram, which, artistic impressions always taken with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, if we have this vehicle doing a right turn in, as we see it now, lots of cyclists, that's great. It'll be sort of clear they could be coming from either direction. But you could imagine there that if that driver was turning in, they may be thinking that they're only going to get cyclists from this direction, and then one could pop out from behind them and then chuck a parked car in there, or a small, like a service truck or something like that. So sight lines are blocked, and that does become the point where it could be a challenge for a rider coming in that direction. Catherine, I was just taking a big breath to talk about the separators themselves, but I'll happily take questions if any have come in.
Well, it's a good one because it's about separators, Ken. What is the view regarding the use of separators and on-road bike lanes with regards to passing laws? A narrow bike lane with a narrow separator can still place the vehicle closer to the cyclist than passing laws permit.
Yeah, I don't actually know the answer to that. I know that was one of the things that came up in the all of those discussions around passing law and passing legislation, and all of the scenarios out there where there is just like really an inability for a driver to get that minimum passing distance. And I don't know whether the addition of the physical separator negates the law, as in this is its own driving road area, or whether it doesn't. If anybody in the chat, is a road rules expert who can give us that specific, we'd be interested. I mean, the practical realities of it are that that separator is doing its job, that it provides that physical barrier. These curbs are mountable, though. Like, don't think that no vehicle can mount over this curve and get into that bike lane. It is providing some small amount of redirectiveness for a vehicle that the addition of the parked vehicles and the parking out this side is wonderful from that extra separation, of course. But where you are, like that other example I had, where there is not like a physical parking and you've just got some sort of separator, a vehicle can enter that. It's just providing really enhanced separation there. And that's why I mentioned, like, a physical barrier system can be used very successfully to separate there. And the whole sort of premise of the road rule is negated if you had that physical separator, like, that you can do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Just a question around, can Ken comment on the Dutch method of having the parking without the raised median?
Yeah, so I do have a couple of examples of that coming up, where it hasn't actually got that physical raised median, or it's got potentially some form of line marking or paddles, and I'll talk a bit more when I show a picture of it.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Ken. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions already, and I like to see a bit of chat going on in the chat as well as the Q&A. I know some of you occasionally can't get to the Q&A because of your firewalls or the like, so we keep track on the chat as well for questions that may come in. Yeah, so the little bit of discussion there around the separators. So good to have that physicalness of it. It creates that absolute barrier so that the parked cars are in the right spot. I'll give a prize because I'm in a prize giving mood here. Why do you think there's these gaps in it? Why didn't they just make it one continuous continuous thing? Yeah, wow, look at it. Drainage, water or drainage. I think somebody said water really quickly. Well done, Matt. Matt's prize winner. You got to be quick with this group, don't you, when I ask a question to get that prize? Yeah, so you've got to provide that drainage to get it through and access, because the curb and channel there and the drainage areas are now not able to be accessed by the water. You either create those or do some significant work to get drainage systems out into your roadway there. So let's talk about the curb profile itself. Now, this is a sort of into the details, but that's what some of you are designing these up. So what we want there is a curb, which is a barrier curb for the parking side, the vehicle side, but a semi-mountable curb or mountable curb for the bike side. So for those just, here's curbing 101, barrier curbs pretty much like that. And then you got a semi-mountable curb, and then like a fully mountable curb is, these are the worst drawings of curbs ever, but really quite mountable. So and there's different profiles. But the idea there is that, if you can make it a bit more friendly, if a rider drifts into there or gets, there's a need to go there, that there's less chance they come off. But we want to provide that barrier for cars. So this got semi-mountable on both sides, not to say it's the only reason that these vehicles are parking up on that, but it does make it easy for them to park their wheels up on this separator. This is just an interesting case study of a site all round as to community pushback and widths of a road cross section and widths of the separated cycleway, and another interesting one which I talk a little bit about is whether you measure from the face of curb or at this point, really realistically, that's the width of your cycleway. But some do measure out all that way, and you really understand that cyclists don't ride in that area. But yeah, another picture of the same site there. And actually, this is the same site as well, and a picture there of a driver deciding that they really didn't like the scheme and would park themselves in there. I'm pretty sure that was just an intentional protest park. But then, we've got to think about all of that. There's challenges to get through. Another one of the same site. Yeah, it's a little narrower than you'd actually be liking there. One thing that we often talk about also with these separated facilities is bins. So for residents to put their bins out, you can see actually that this one is on this side of the road here where there's a lot of parkland, which is great. But the ability to put the bins out somewhere and to think through that is of additional importance. And of course, we have the parking, which we were looking at, but we also need to think about the disabled car parking spaces and the ability for people of all abilities to still have a really good spot to park and then be able to access onto the footpath accordingly. So there's a standard sort of set up for how that could happen. Nice and easy in that one. Sometimes actual sites are a bit more challenging. That one's out of the Vic Roads. Guidelines for treating bicycle car dooring collisions. Yeah, so even with these facilities, another challenge that comes up is pedestrians. And like the reason it's a bit of a challenge is that not all pedestrians are as alert to the fact that a rider would be curbside. So they may be walking out, they're not quite realizing that cyclists could be coming. So yeah, we can still provide those pedestrian crossings in this section. Some rumble strips on the approach to this one. This is an interesting one. Anybody seeing anything a little odd about this one though? Yes, well done, Matthew. No pram ramps for the pedestrian there, so it is a bit of an interesting one to get out to the bus stop. They haven't provided the pram ramps, the curb cut downs there, which you'd expect. So it's a bit of an odd one. Okay, here's another one. This is out of TMR's documentation, and you can see here is that opportunity to provide some physical separation, but using these narrower ones without the dooring possibility because it's no parking there. As I mentioned, like big advantages because we get something physical there, and certainly a vehicle sort of distracted or the like will get a clue. They will be slightly redirected, and yeah, they're unlikely to get into this area. I do want to highlight though that is quite easily mountable by a vehicle, so we're not absolutely eliminating that exposure to crashes, but we're doing a pretty decent job of lessening the likelihood of it. And an interesting possibility then around utilizing those sort of areas with landscaping and the like. We've seen a variety of things happen around the world. Certainly, COVID sprung up a whole lot of people doing these pop-up bike lanes and different configurations of that. I like this for a number of reasons. We've got some nice physical separation. It's quite obvious. I think there are some challenges on this associated with bikes, catching pedals on the gaps here, and then the maintenance challenges associated with it, but it does provide that separation. Quick prize if you tell me which city this is around the world. It is Auckland, isn't it? Well done. Sandra's first on Auckland there. So again, another pop-up one. And I'm a big fan of the pop-up stuff, as many of you are, in the sense of you get the ability to put it in place, and all of those complaints from people that are going to come in, as they always do when we change anything in the road or street environment, there's going to be complaints. Like, people think that they're going to put out some sort of change to the road environment that's been there for forever, and that people aren't going to complain. Of course they're going to complain. So the ability to say to them, hey, this is a trial, let's put it out there. We've got an easy ability to remove it if it doesn't work. And usually people are just, scared of the change. And once it's in, they get used to it and, carry on. And then you can formalize it. So pop-up's good. These ones are, some planter boxes and some spike down curbing there, or whatever those things are called. But yeah, again, I mean, there's some challenges associated with maintaining those, and vandalism to them, people moving them around, vehicles tracking around and moving them. So they do need a bit of attention. This one's got had a bit of challenge with things being pulled out of it and the like. Nonetheless, I think good to trial it that way. So if you're looking to put one in, go with we're doing this as a temporary bit, and then go in further. That probably would have helped back in that other one I showed you, where the people were parking all over it and up on it. Having put that in as a temporary one, I think would have calmed a lot of people down, and could have been done relatively cheaply in the scheme of things. In the end, that, as I understand, that one actually got ripped out altogether. So the civil infrastructure cost, then to put it in and then take it out, it could have been managed in that way. Ash has jumped in there by telling us what these little things were. They are armadillos. So let's give Ash a prize for that. They're called armadillos. Some people call them bumblebees, but there are, I think there are other coloured ones. They're armadillos because, yes, they've got that shape of the armadillo. There's some other coloured ones. Now, yeah, the advantages obviously do provide some sort of tactile response if a vehicle is to drift into that lane, but they can really destabilize riders as well. So I think use with caution. These ones in Western Australia were ripped out due to some of that cycling, the cycling challenges, cyclists hitting them, being destabilized, not really being very obvious to the riders. We do get other forms. I'm quite attracted to sort of this style of setup where we have the paddles in a sort of separator area. I'm attracted to this on a couple of levels. One being that you really don't need to spend a lot in terms of your drainage and fixing up drainage, civil infrastructure. It does a really good job in highlighting the cycle facility itself. You've got a little bit of space here to work with, but from the perspective of some sort of separation and enhancing the separation available is pretty good. And in the narrower sections, we start to see a lot of this. Again, pop-up facilities, spike down with some flexible bollards there. So really well delineated separation, but not to be confused with absolute physical separation, so a driver can't get in there at all. We're still relying on the drivers generally being fully aware of this and that separated facility. And the other one, which was a little bit like sometimes done in the Netherlands and other areas where there's parking, there is some sort of buffer, but there's no physical curb separators or the like. This is Albert Street in Melbourne, for those who know the area. It was one of the first ones to push parking out and done in that configuration with flexible bollards. So you got some really good advantages from this. Again, lower cost. The placement of the bollards, you can put them so all doors can still open in line with the wheel is a good spot. So linking them up with your car parking and segmenting them out that way. We don't have that physical separation. I think the presence of those flexible posts in there are really important, though, to ensure that those cars are not actually parking curbside. I think, yeah, if this was absolutely commonplace, it was everywhere, it wouldn't be as critical. But certainly, as you roll these out, if there's not very clear indication to a driver that they cannot park curbside, they will park curbside, and one will do it, and then the rest will do it, or you'll have this mishmash. So that's an important aspect to it. So those, flexible bollards, I think there's a little bit of discussion in the chat going on about flexible bollards. There is a raft of them available. Some of them are spring-based at the bottom, hinge-based. Some of them are a plastic product in its own right that bends and sort of rubberized products and the like. So there's plenty available. We wouldn't want to be putting any sort of solid bollards in this sort of environment for a couple of reasons. One being that cyclists could be striking them. The other is that this is used as a vehicle running lane at different points in time also, and that depending on the speed environment, can be an issue for a driver striking it as well. Before I jump into some more on-road stuff, let's have I'll see if Catherine or Marissa have questions in there around those separated sort of Copenhagen style ones where we've pushed the parking out. We've got some form of separator if there's parking enough to sort of cover dooring areas. I do have some dimensions on that coming up a bit later in this session. Any thoughts?
Just a couple of questions, Ken. That's all right.
Yeah.
E-mobility. So as we know, e-scooters are on the rise, and it's, I guess, people's second car these days. I would imagine, with the cost difference between a new vehicle and an e-scooter. We do note that they do use the separated facilities, especially in urban environments. Just a question around that within Victoria, and is that something that we should be promoting, I guess, or is it, is it something that will lead to safety issues for vulnerable road users?
Yeah, it's. We do have quite a mix of micromobility going on, and the use of a separated facility like that is a natural flow if you've got that device. I take one certain view of it in the sense that that's a vulnerable road user. Yeah. And if we have a separated facility, they should absolutely use it. The highest risk thing we have for vulnerable road users in our road environment is being struck by a passenger vehicle or a commercial vehicle or a larger vehicle. That's where the death and serious injury risk is very high. We have the interaction between micromobility modes or modes of vulnerable road user transport. So scooters striking pedestrians, bikes striking e-bikes, and all of that mix. it is a lower energy event. Okay, by no means am I saying there's no possibility of serious injury or death, but it is a lower energy event, and so it's a lower risk event. Now, some people get really angry at that. I mean, it is what it is. I just think for us as infrastructure engineers and those designing and managing the road system, we need to keep abreast of what the legislation and the like is saying and what the trends are in these modes. As we see more and more of this coming, we might need to be pushing for wider curbside facilities to provide that area, and then understanding that we're going to have speed differential between people non-power assisted and power assisted. And we even know that, some of the smaller things that are actually classified as motorbikes even will use those facilities as well. That one is illegal, but, we're starting to see more and more of it.
Yeah. No, great. And just a question around bollards. The bollards on the side of the bike lane restrict faster cyclists overtaking slower cyclists. Do we assume fast cyclists will be happy waiting for a break in the bollards?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the width of your bike lane in the single direction. It certainly can do that. At what point you get to, providing that extra width for overtaking and like, I'm not sure about. The bollards are pretty important from that sense of vehicles. All it would take is one vehicle to go to curbside, and you've basically eliminated the use of most of that Copenhagen style facility, and it could cause absolute chaos. So I think we get a lot of advantages out of that.
Great. Thank you, Ken. That is all from me for the minute.
Okay. Well, let's do a little bit of what's wrong with this photo, or what could be better here. Pop a few things in the chat. What do you think? It's been sitting up there for a while, so you probably had a look at it. Oh, what are we seeing here? John's gone with dooring risk. Give John a prize. Adrian was in there with door opening very quickly after, but I'm giving John the prize there. Door.
A good observation there, Ken, around the pedestrians walking within the bicycle lane in that shot.
Yes, up the top there. Yeah, well, we'll give a prize for that as well. Max popped this one in there, and he zoomed in on that as well, which was interesting. Looks like a skateboarder, actually.
Oh, skateboarder. Classic.
Yeah, good fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we're talking about the dooring and the dooring risk there. So thanks everybody for getting that in there. Let's have a chat about dooring. So dooring, obviously, that term, I say obviously, but I've got to define it, is where a door opens in front of a cyclist and the cyclist strikes the door. And there's different studies that have shown how frequent this is, and it is quite frequent. I forget, Marilyn Johnson was telling me about this study, and it was like 1 in every 3 trips for a commuter cyclist, they're exposed to some form of door opening in their path, which I certainly experienced it a lot. I didn't know it would be that much. Here's a little bit of vision. Max and I were out doing 360 footage, and so this is off Max's head, and that's me riding behind there. Then you can see, I had to avoid that one. But I have cat-like reflexes, so no worries there. The interesting thing around some assessment of the actual fatalities and serious injuries associated with dooring for cyclists. There's certainly serious injuries associated with the striking of the door, but the even higher severity events, fatalities, and the high-level serious injuries have actually arisen from a rider having a secondary incident being pushed into the traffic lane. Here's a bit of video of sort of how that would occur. So lucky one here, but you can see the actual incident of hitting the door in this case. Well, they probably hurt themselves, but you can see how close it came to an absolute tragedy there. So yeah, the importance of that separation is huge. So if we can do it, it's really good. Bit of the Vic Roads guidance document talks about where the door strikes happen from. You need to understand a little bit about what their data sample was in terms of the lane configurations during that. But driver side, passenger side. I'm going to jump past that because I think this is a good demonstration. This little diagram showing the different areas, so different road use classifications. So this one is under the Smart Roads road use hierarchy categorization, but you could use sort of different ways to think about that. And the different treatments that are possible for eliminating or significantly reducing car dooring collisions. And you can see the appropriateness there based on different treatments. And we won't be going through all of those different road hierarchies, but I'm going to jump through a few different ways under different circumstances that are not that physical Copenhagen style separation. When I say Copenhagen style, I'm meaning that physical curb separator with the car parking out. Okay, so if we are unable to do that, get the parking out and run the cyclist curbside, which is our preferred one where you have that separation, common method is to have a marked bike lane running door side. Now, there's a position a couple of positions we don't like bikes riding in, one being very close to the doors, and any sort of experienced rider will attest to that. You keep yourself away from the doors, and you're always looking at the driver's seats to try to see if you can see somebody in there as you go along, getting ready to react. Also, though, the further you push yourself out, you are very close then to passing traffic, which is also a danger. There was some research done by Cameron Munro in 2015 around this little idea of providing some specific green markings in the optimal area for a rider to try to guide them into that position. And it showed some effectiveness in terms of changing riders' riding position. So not bad there. And New Zealand also did a little bit of that, trying to pull riding lines into appropriate spots using a little bit of this inner bluey green paint. I don't know if this one got evaluated at all. I thought it was a sort of interesting way to show it's a bike lane without having to use all of that paint, which was which could be beneficial. As I always say, I like these things to be evaluated so we actually know whether that's a good thing or not. But I'll put it in there for your interest. I'm going to give you a stretch break in a few minutes. So, and I do have a little bit at the end. I need to take you through the learning management system and show you some other things. So we can provide this, what is termed a double chevron. I don't think it's actually is a chevron. It's just a bit of marking, but the buffer there for car dooring, but also for the passing vehicles, provides that nice extra bit of space, extra little buffer zone for the rider. Obviously, you need to have the road space to do this, but marking it out really clearly defines those areas that everybody should be using to try to provide that buffer space. I also talk to people. Somebody's saying it is a chevron. Okay, thank you. Good. I thought okay. I'll explain why. Isn't a chevron like that? Somebody else can correct me. And these are just that. That was the reason I brought it up. But anyway, I'm probably going to start a chat war now on that. Can be both. Thank you. Okay, good. We're all happy. A nice diplomatic answer. I always like to narrow parking lanes parking spots as much as I can. Even if you have the option to make them bigger, make them small, because it just pulls the drivers curbside. They get that natural. They're really trying to fit it in, and they will make sure they've got as close to the curb as they possibly can, because they're feeling outside their parking spot, and that gives us that advantage of giving us the extra space. And this is the point where I was going to show you some of those lane configuration and lane layouts here. So Max has taken these. I was going to say I took these. I didn't take these. Max took these out of the City of Melbourne bike lane guidelines. Another really good place to get an idea of some of the configurations of spacing associated with these sorts of buffer zones, separated bike facilities and the like is through Austroads. I still really like that document, the cycling aspects of the Austroads guide. It was a 2017 document that just collected all those cycling bits from all the Austroads guides. Because if you're anything like me, you're jumping around guides to try and pick up the information you want, or to try to understand the context of that. So that really provides some benefit. Okay, I'm seeing a bit of activity. It looks like there's a hand raised as well. So I'll let's see what we going to do here. Catherine, do you want to ask any questions?
Yes, there's one. Yeah, there's a bit of chat going on in the chat, and I've got one in the Q&A, Ken. But did we want to ask that question to someone who's got their hand raised?
Well, I'm not sure if it's an accidental hand raise. That's always an option.
Yeah. All right.
I think it might have been. It's disappeared now, so
yes,
let's take it as an accidental hand raise.
All right. I think here's one for you around tram tracks, Ken.
Yeah.
Tram tracks are very dangerous for cyclists traveling in the same longitudinal direction. I went to a crash on Monday where the cyclist's wheels slipped into the tram tracks and she fell into a parked vehicle, probably fracturing her spine, which is pretty terrible. What can be done to protect cyclists in this case? Should cyclists be allowed on roads with no bike lanes and with tram tracks?
Okay, so what a great question there. So we get a prize for the question, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, Max, I will alert him to this question came up because he's done quite a bit of work in the space of infrastructure, street and road design, where you have tracks, and did quite a bit of work in Newcastle with they had some obviously their light rail, and there was a fatality up there associated with the cyclist and the track and those sort of things. So yeah, the obvious parts are you want to try to ensure that you're crossing tracks at as close to a right angle as you can. I think there might even be a slide later, if not in this session or another module, talking about exactly the sort of angles you want to be at an absolute minimum track crossing. There are products available that can lessen the impact of tram tracks on bike crashes. Now, I mean, some of them are pretty. Some of them are quite innovative. Again, this is the kind of stuff I think we need to get out there and we trial and we actually evaluate properly. But if you sort of think of a track kind of like that, and the issue is dropping into it and destabilizing, I mean, essentially one of the things provides a a thing across the track that's essentially sort of spring loaded. Because of course, when your actual tram, your light rail, or whatever it is comes through, it's got to use that track. So at these different particular points, though, that the weight of a bike would not push that down, but the weight of the tram itself or the like does push it down. So those sorts of things are quite interesting. We certainly in Victoria and in Melbourne especially, we are very used to tram tracks, and the idea to not let cyclists on roads with tram tracks basically means you can't ride anywhere in Melbourne, but we're not going down that track. Excuse the pun. But yeah, understanding, yes, how can we with our design keep this in account when we're doing new tracks or we're doing alterations to a road environment that has tracks, and then highlighting tracks as well to riders. I do have an example coming up where it's pretty appalling what they've done with some tracks, but we'll see what others think about it. Please share your thoughts in there.
I guess we've all had experience with a circle of our friends that have had accidents on tram tracks, haven't we? I know a small handful. It's pretty frightening, isn't it? Especially in the wet weather conditions that we have in Victoria.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it is something you're very aware of as a rider in Melbourne. But as other areas roll out, new light rail systems and the like, it becomes something that maybe a lot of their riding community hasn't grown up with and just might be not understanding of that, had it as a kid. And so how that then plays out, a rollout perspective is important.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Thank you, Ken.
No, that's all right. So you're seeing here, these ranges of widths and parking bay widths, buffer zone widths, and you end up sort of playing around with this for your optimal setup, and it is quite dependent on a variety of factors. What is the design vehicle for the road? So can we be narrowing down the travel lane? I always say, the people who just default to a 3.5 meter lane in some of these urban areas is just crazy. That's just wasted wonderful space for that we could utilize far better than just having a wide traffic lane. And that wide traffic lane is even going to entice higher speeds of vehicles. So we can eat up a fair chunk of that. Again, you need to get into the details of that, though, to check that the vehicles you've got using that road can fit it and can make their turns and things appropriately. Down to 1.5. I've seen 1.2 at an absolute minimum for bike lane single direction. It's getting tight there. You want to provide that separation when you can. So if you just don't have the space then, and you're looking at, well, do I provide some of that chevron buffer area next to the door, or do I provide it out on the other side where it separates a bit from the vehicle to the bike? Is a bit dependent on the operations of your area. And the rule of thumb generally out there is that if this is high parking turnover, you want to provide the buffer. If it's low parking turnover and reasonably high volume of traffic here, you'd go the other way and you'd provide the buffer out there. Now, the reason for that is just around the risk, the frequency of opening doors in front of vehicles versus the frequency of being struck by a vehicle in the traffic lane. Okay, not ideal in either way, is it? But you start to find yourself in that mode. So there's a bit of a rule of thumb for you. I don't have precise figures for you, as in what traffic volume you would tick over to that point, but factor that in as a bit of a principle to think about. This one's an interesting one. It sort of looks like quite a wide carriageway where they could do more, but you've got this awkward parallel middle of street parking, which means that there's that area of a bit of challenge. But in these configurations, again, another one where you've got that 2.2 meter wide parking bay width, keep it as narrow as you can, get them parking as close to the curb as possible, and your chevron width there. And here's an example of the other way around, out of New Zealand, where it's more that buffer separation between the vehicles traveling and the bike lane area. So yes, this is the kind of thing you'd be more inclined to do in more longer term car parks and the like. So there's less opening and closing of the door. I'll take, if anybody's got any specific comments on that. Actually, there's a Victorian example of that altered configuration with more residential car parks where they have their permit parking and those sort of things, and having the bikes run close to the doors. That might be a decent time, and people can have a look at that one in a little bit more detail as we take our stretch break. Pop your questions into the Q&A or pop your comments into the chat as we go. But I'm going to give you 4 minutes and 5 seconds as a break.
Thanks, Ken. See you soon.
Thank you. And I hear Kathy was so excited that we were talking bike lanes that she's decided to join in. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Ken. Hi, Catherine. G'day, everyone. I do get very excited about bike lanes, especially separated ones. But that's not what we're looking at right now, is it?
No, and you're right, Kathy, and you're angry at the fact that it's not a nice separated facility, and it's in line with one of the comments that came in as a lot of these examples could really be made into nice Copenhagen facilities with not an excessive amount of work, and I agree. I think we using them because we have them at hand, but if you got in there and rolled your sleeves up on some of these streets, you could do some pretty exciting stuff. I suppose it comes back to a higher level strategic thinking around your strategic cycling corridors and, where do you start that work? Sort of, if you do it in an ad hoc manner, you'll have little segments here and there. Strategically thinking through your network and then really starting to roll that out, hammering government for more funding for bikes will mean that we can do this for a lot of routes. Anyway, off on a tangent. Good to have you here, Kathy.
Good to be here. Kathy. Thank
you. Okay, and let's now sort of take it from those street environments into more your arterial road environments where it's a real challenge, and it really doesn't align well with our safe system principles in terms of these higher speed vehicles. And when I say higher speed, I mean, I'm talking anything sort of 50, 60 kilometers an hour, not even up to your 80 kilometers an hour, because that speed of strike of a bike that is likely to kill or seriously injure is around that 30 kilometers an hour. Even, it could be even a little less than that, depending exactly on the configuration. So these sort of, painted bike lanes outside of curve, at the point of merge here, all sorts of, reasons why it's not great. Now, physical barrier systems would be great here. Some sort of enhanced bollard separation with flexible bollards. Okay, that's again not going to provide that physical redirective property. If the vehicle was to strike this, they will mount it, but it really enhances the delineation and that space for the rider. So we want to be doing that. As we get into these higher speed, higher volume roads, we have to, as an industry, acknowledge this is unacceptable, right? Just like, okay, that just doesn't align with our safe system principles, in the sense that we're going to have vehicles at 70 kilometers an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, and we have a vulnerable road user there, and we're heavily reliant on that driver never making an error. And that just doesn't fit within our safe system philosophy. So we have to demand these physically separated off-road facilities, off-road paths, and an area for riders to be separated from those vehicles. The operate, like the rollout of that and the challenges associated with it, yes, is big, and we've got to work on it. But at a principle level, this just does not work. But you'll find it in Austroads still, wide curbside bike lanes. I mean, there's commentary around why it's a bad thing, but it still sits there as that option. You can jump into the Global Street Design Guide, and you can have a look at some of those different cross sections. They do a good job of nice artistic impressions and lane configurations and widths of different areas and the like. I think Max pointed you at that. If he hasn't already, there's a link in the resource folder of the Learning Management System where you can download this. I think it's as a download because it's like it's like 400 megabyte or something, and like 300 pages of lots of diagrams and things. It's a good, exciting guide. So have a look at it if you've got an interest. And the last sort of category want to get into is mixed traffic. And I preface this with that point of you can only be mixing traffic, as in mixing cyclists and passenger vehicles, if the speed is very low. Like the idea that it could possibly be done on higher speed just doesn't work. This diagram was out of the VicRoads document, which talks about some sort of lane sharing at below 40 kilometers per hour operating speed. I would tend to like to see a little lower than that, but then we move into physically separated facilities with curbing, parking out, or at least curbing. And then in these higher speed environment, as I talked about, the completely separated facilities. This is an adaptation of a Dutch diagram, and the Dutch diagram, I'm pretty sure, went 30 there around for that. But this will do, Hickey. What's it called? Prize for that. Who's got the name of that first? Yeah, it's a Sharrow. Well done. I think MG onto that first. It's a Sharrow, and it is to indicate that area of the road where it is shared between a cyclist and a motorized vehicle. A lot of social media chatter around the value of these. Of course, they don't provide much value. They're just a little bit of paint there, as it's almost like a warning device in its own right. What they can do, a little bit of recognition that there will be bikes in this area and the like. I really don't feel that the community understands the relevance of giving cyclists priority and then sharing that road in that sense. But the painting of a Sharrow or not, let's think about the road environment and the street environment in its own right. And we want to be making that street environment low speed. We want to do that through local area traffic management features to ensure vehicles are slow. We want to be using lower speed limits as well to enhance that. And if we are able to ensure that we have those vehicle speeds well down, then the idea that you can provide more of a mixed environment is acceptable. Again, I always get a little nervous and thinking, if you think 8 to 80 design, like, is an 8-year-old gonna be claiming parts of this street and road over passenger vehicles, and you get a little bit nervous on that. So I love a separated facility. I mean, the 30 kilometre per hour is certainly going to be very helpful in keeping those vehicle speeds down. But yeah, don't think your Sharrow is going to do everything for you. Here's they call it a Sharrow flower, which is saying that there's going to be bikes on all these directions. But yeah, don't think it's going to solve all your answers. I wouldn't even consider it a safety feature, in my opinion. I think Kathy says the same opinion as well. But and here's one which I thought was an interesting little use of Sharrow, and this is the one I referred to earlier to say this is a bit horrible in that sense of parallel tram tracks or light rail tracks there, and utilizing that central area to try to say that cyclists go there. I mean, the Sharrow's there obviously because the street dining pushes cyclists out, but I think a rethink in this on a number of levels is required. So there you go, big red cross from Max on that one. Now, I mentioned local area traffic management features, and for those who aren't aware what I mean by that, it's any feature that you would use in those local blocks and areas to slow vehicles down. Speed humps, one-way slow points, small roundabouts, raised intersections. These are all in the suite of local area traffic management features. And I just love it when people think about cyclist bypass facilities in these, because most of the ones I just mentioned there squeeze the road down, and often, if people don't think about cyclists, will squeeze the rider into that area. But this one's a great example where we've got the cyclist bypass area, and we've got a one-way slow point. So a vehicle approaching this is going, two vehicles approaching this, well, they got to work out who goes first, and they slow down. The cyclist doesn't get caught up in that squeeze point mess. And another good one from New Zealand, same deal, that sort of one-way slow point, or not quite big enough for vehicles and slowing vehicles there, and the riders get their run through. So a lot of the local areas, if we're still thinking about local areas, are wonderful opportunities to provide cycling facilities and major cycle routes. So we might have an arterial road running parallel, but the street environment provides a wonderful opportunity for cyclists. And the reason it provides these wonderful opportunities is you can take large amounts of cycling traffic and put it on these roads, and it's not got the same impact in terms of noise and safety implications and other things as if you were to take large volumes of cars and put them into these residential areas, which we don't want. But associated then with that is we can start to be more thoughtful about blocking vehicle rat running, essentially, or using these as through routes. So here's an example there where the road used to continue through and just blocked off for vehicles, but cyclists continue through. And this is part of a strategic cycling corridor. So that's a really nice sort of network planning way to think about it. And obvious to a lot of the planners out there and the like, but it's a really good option. This one was a little bit problematic in its implementation, though, where the bike facility goes through, but the cars ended up just sort of doing that, and it created a few more conflict points with the bike. So possibly not the most successful one. The principle good, But certainly this one where it's physically blocked off and no other way to go means that we just have far less traffic, lower speed, and complete access there for the bikes. And I think that one, there you go, has got the nice little built area and the cyclists go through. Okay, I'm getting close to the point I wanted to get to jump you into the learning management system to show you and have a talk about the assignment. And we did want to give you some time within this session to jump into your assignment, roll the sleeves up and have a look at a few designs. I will pause there though. A couple of photos there, which are head scratches. One, a real head scratcher as to who's put the fence right there or which came first, the line marking or the fence. The other one, though, unfortunately, just seems to be common practice of placing the construction site traffic management in the bike lane and ignoring the bikes, essentially, utilizing that as their space for signage and the like. Any questions? Oh, there's our friend, the penny farthing rider up and down Sydney Road in Melbourne. It's a bit of fun.
Oh,
questions?
Good, Ken. Oh, good, really. We feel like we're having a good chat in the chat, but no specific questions for you at this stage.
Okay, cool. Well, that means I do pop your questions in if you do have any questions, but what I'm going to do is just jump you into the learning management system. I have quite a few things I want to show you in the learning management system, some of them associated with what we've covered today, but also very much your assignment. Now, hopefully the assignment won't take you too long. In fact, we've designed it so it shouldn't take you too long. So don't cancel your weekend plans because you've got an assignment. You'll be able to fit it in. Right. Hopefully you are very familiar with the learning management system by now. Now, Catherine, just checking here, you're seeing the learning management system, are you?
Yes, all good, Ken. I can say that. Great.
So in here, you've got the welcome, and it was nice to see introductions from people. So if you haven't done that already, jump in there and introduce yourself. And you've always got the link to the webinar, which you managed to find because you're here. I suppose if you're watching the recording of this, you may not, but anyway. Now, I talked about resources. So you've got resources in here, course information, the reference documents and resources here. There's quite a lot of stuff in there that is worth sort of going through at your own pace and making sure you're aware of those documents. And some of them you'll find really useful. Some of them you might not. So a couple of other links in there. So that's the link to the Global Design Cities Initiative. That's the one, it's the big document to download. And some Global Design City Initiative videos as well. And we do have here a resources shared by participants. If you've got things you want to drop in there that you think others might find useful, please do so. We love that sharing of information. Now, for each of the modules, you'll see that the recording does land in there. So it usually takes 24 hours or so as it goes in and it gets processed and then uploaded to YouTube or whatever. But you'll be able to go back to that, click on that, and you'll get the recording. Make sure you've done the Module 1 quiz if you haven't done it already. And you can see the presentation and then you've seen this 360. So let's go into today's module. So Module 2, on-road cycling facilities. And you can see the presentation slides are there. And you've got a on-road facilities bit of video footage. So here is the video footage. You've got Max there, and if we look around, you'll see me riding, and then Max and I having a chat, and then we ride through a separated facility and then an on-road facility, just to give that difference. If you're not a rider, our aim here was really to give people who are not bike riders, who are in charge of designing and managing infrastructure, a little bit of a feel for what's going on. Pro tip here from Ken, when you open it up, go down here to your settings and go to quality, and instead of having it as auto, pop it up to 4K there. That way it'll ensure you get nice, clear vision. It might take a little bit longer to give it some buffering, but then you get a really nice run there. So I'll just jump forward and see if we can get a little bit of, oh, Max is talking for a long time. Anyway, you get a nice run through, and of course you can either try and use this as a bit of, looking at the specifics of how they've done this, how they've treated some of these areas. One thing I actually want to talk about, and hopefully you're seeing a little bit of this, is this point. So we have this challenge of vehicles entering into bike areas from both directions. One little trick that I really like to do in the design of these facilities is this area here. Hopefully you're seeing the little hand there. This area here, if you can use the sort of bluestone, cobblestone here, it actually helps to slow drivers at this point, or drivers turning in really slow in this area, which is a good point, because it gives a cyclist more time to see the vehicle coming in. It gives the drivers slow down at that point. They're less likely to take that fast move through. So that's a really important point. And you can see there is a good bit of space in this one where they could have done some good treatments. The green marking through here, well, that's there to warn drivers that there could be bikes present. That is the traditional use of green marking in the road environment. It's now sort of expanded to use to try to get cyclists to take a particular path, but its original purpose was simply this point, a cyclist could be coming. So you as a driver, beware, there could be cyclists coming. That was its purpose originally. So have a look at that. That's got some nice footage there. When you go a little bit down, you'll see some footage of, so this one's the Copenhagen style one, and then you can see some other cycling facilities next to parked vehicles and the like, and getting an idea of that change. Okay, so that's the vision. So we want you to watch that. Before next session, Max will ask you a little bit about that, and you can make your comments if you want. So we've got that. And then we go into Module 2 assignment. So if you click on this, what you get to is a Word document and a PDF. So a little note here, and maybe Kathy will explain, but all users from Transport for New South Wales, please email your assignment if you have trouble with uploading. Yes, Transport for New South Wales firewalls seem to block lots of stuff. So if you're having trouble there from Transport, you can just do that. Everyone else will have an upload spot where they can just drop their assignment in and upload. So what you're going to do is you're going to download both of these documents. You're going to download on both of those. And I'm going to start with the design. Okay, so we have a design for you. So this is the design of some infrastructure alterations to a road in Launceston. Now, this is provided for training purposes only. Please, if you live in Launceston, don't be telling people this is what's happening. It's for training purposes only. It was used for an Austroads project. I dare say some of the CASA crew might have been involved in some of the discussions around this. They weren't the designers as such, but we were playing around with different ideas and thoughts and thinking about what could improve safety and safe system alignment. But we're going to use these to look at, well, how are we going here for cyclists' safety? So you've downloaded the design. You can see the design here. It's a one-way road, and there's a cycle facility being added here, and there's some raised intersections and some curb outstands or curb build outs, depending on which jurisdiction you're in, what you call them. So there's that. And then there's the, download it again, am I? Yeah. Then we've got the Word document. Oh, here it is. So the Word document is where you're actually going to put your information. So we want you to have a look at the existing conditions. So not what's on the design. You just jump into Street View. Have a look at the existing conditions. All right. You're going to then look at the design, but you're going to fill out the table provided below. You're going to save it, ideally PDF it, and then you're going to upload it. You're going to put your name in here. You're going to say, and you're just going to answer these questions in a short manner. You don't need to be writing us, a big thesis on this, just some dot point thoughts. How does the existing environment cater for cyclists? Yeah. That's when you go to Street View, you have a look at it. What do you think? How have they done there? What about the design? How does it go in catering for cyclists? And a bit of information in there. Then we want what treatments, changes in the design could you recommend to improve the safety of cyclists? So that's back to that design that we were looking at. So you're looking at this. What could be altered in this to improve the safety of cyclists? You've got a few pages to work through. It's not to say it's bad, but what could be improved for cyclists? So you're going to finish writing 3 things in there. We want 3 dot points. If you're really struggling to find 3 things or think of 3 things, maybe shoot through an email to training@safesystemsolutions.com.au and you might get some hints, but I think you'll be able to find 3 things that could be improved with that design. Then you'll save, ideally save as PDF, and jump back into the learning management system where you should have an upload. I don't seem to have the upload, maybe because I'm not there or it's not open yet. Maybe, I'm not sure. Anyway, there's an upload button, or you can drag and drop it in, and it will then be marked. So you will actually have somebody have a look at it and give you a mark. You need an 80% pass mark. They're not the hardest markers ever. So you, as long as you've had a good crack at this, I'm sure you'll get over that 80% pass mark. It is due on Monday, the 27th at 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, I assume. So you've got a bit of time, but you're looking to get it in. I think that's because before next session, and there'll be a bit of discussion about it. Correct me if I got anything wrong there, Kathy or Catherine, but that's the assignment you've got. So we are going to give you a little bit of time now to do that assignment. We don't want to eat up your work time or your weekend. You've allocated some time for this course, so we will be giving you a bit of time to have a go at it. You could almost probably finish it within the time, but I will take any questions or comments at this stage.
No, all good. I guess just a comment there on how many words, Ken, but I said just keep it nice and brief, and dot points are ideal.
Yeah, dot points are ideal. That's right. Enough to show that you actually got in there, you thought about cyclist safety, you've utilized some of the learnings from the module that you've just had around on-road bike lane, separated facilities, and some of those configurations and challenges. Yeah, that's enough. A good handful of dot points. we'll do it. But we need 3 ideas on tweaks, changes, modifications, alterations to the design itself to improve cyclist safety. We're not budget limiting you on that either, but try and keep it within the realms of possibility.
Just a couple of things that popped up there in terms of terms. So what does surface treatment mean? And what is a buffer zone?
So surface treatment would, sorry, I'm just jumping into that to talk about. So it would be altering the road. So the way I talked a little bit about for that turn area to make it a bit of a rough surface, could be cobblestones, bluestones, it could be some sort of surface like that, is the surface treatment. And what was the other one? A buffer zone.
Buffer zone.
So buffer zone is essentially that painted buffer area. The way we had it with painted chevron buffer area, we were talking about in earlier slides. Good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Just another question there from Rob. Just around separated cycle tracks, which is better? 2-way on the side of road with less driveways, or 2-way on the side of the roads with more driveways that has greater attractions?
Case by case on that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a challenge. If you've got good formalized crossing facilities, I would say the side with less access points, because the riders can ride, jump off, cross the road at a nice designated facility. But if you don't have that, then it's probably the other side. So
yeah, probably just time for one more so we can let people get on to the assignment. Just flagging it as might be a tricky question, but how would you recommend striking the balance between cost and benefit of improved cycle facilities? Some of us will be involved in project planning stages, and best practice comes at a cost, which is often hard to reconcile, especially when Ausroad still has worst practice options on table. Do you have any recommendations about how to sell these treatments?
It is a great question.
Yes.
Prize there, because sort of hit the nail on the head in some of the challenges we face at a project level, and a treat of you're trying to build this awkward, challenging business case a lot of the time. I think we need to ensure that it's very clear that these projects have huge, wide benefits in terms of health benefits, not just in reduction in road trauma, but in people's ability to use active forms of transport, the reduction in the wear and tear, environmental improvements. I'm not sure in an economic sense the quantification of all the externality benefits has been adequate. So we've really got to lobby for that. We've got to lobby at a higher level in some sort of equity in transport spend. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous how little money goes into cycling infrastructure and walking infrastructure compared to road infrastructure. And yet pretty much, the bulk of strategies, plans, objectives, and everything like that really well aligned with more cycling and more walking. Yes, we need, freight routes and those sort of things, and they need to be continue to be designed and operated and managed in appropriate ways. But it's just, the balance is just way off. So that's at a big high level. So make sure your chief executives, your directors are in there lobbying, pushing, write your letters to MPs. And at our level, I also think that often we see gold standard or nothing, and that if we've gone off gold standard, it can't be safe. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity for safe stuff if we're willing to think slightly differently about the way vehicles operate.
Mm.
I showed you, blocking off vehicle access to different points, slowing down speed significantly. It should be all on the table, and don't be reluctant to do that if you can't get that massive dollar investment to provide your separated cycle facility. So, I mean, it probably doesn't alleviate all answers, but it's sort of a way of thinking about what can be done using just basic safety principles if we can't afford that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ken. All righty. We should let these people get stuck into their assignment.
Yes. Now, of course, I just say it again, email through. If you are having trouble with the assignment, you don't understand it, you can't find stuff, we can give you assistance. If you have trouble uploading it or anything, email it through. We've got a wonderful support team for the training. Kathy's team there who will help out and get in contact. So email through any questions or comments. Otherwise, have a look at the design, have a look at the street view of the existing conditions of York Street and Launceston, and pop your thoughts into that Word document download from the Learning Management System. Thanks, everyone.
Right.
You got
Thank
Max
you.
again next module. And Catherine, are you coming back for next module?
I think Ainsley's back on board next week.
Right, back to the A team then, is it?
Yes, we're the B, aren't we? B for
Okay.
backup. Yeah, great. No, good session, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kathy,
Cheers.
for jumping in. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.